Hello, and welcome to this guided meditation. This meditation is for anyone who suffers from and is looking for ways to overcome their perfectionism. Perfectionism involves a tendency to set standards that are so high that they either can't be met or are only met with great difficulty. As perfectionists, we tend to believe that anything short of perfection is horrible, and that even minor imperfections will lead to catastrophe. For example, most people believe it's important to try to do one's best and not make mistakes. However, most people also believe that making mistakes from time to time is inevitable, and that making a mistake does not mean that they have failed something entirely. However, we perfectionists tend to believe that we should never make mistakes, and that making a mistake means we are a failure or a horrible person for disappointing others. Thinking like this makes it really scary for us to make mistakes. Trying to be perfect is also likely to make you feel stressed and maybe even disappointed with yourself much of the time. Because you are not able to meet your standards easily or at all. Over time, you may even start to believe that you're not as capable as others. Therefore, it's worthwhile to consider loosening up your standards a bit to ease the stress and anxiety you may feel from trying so hard to be perfect. Starting a process that will help us let go of these feelings often begins with the body. Scan through the body. Just open, connect with the feeling of space that's here. I'd like you to begin by envisaging a curve of a smile that's spreading through wide open blue sky. Just imagine that. See if it's possible to sense that uplifted curve, that openness, that space. Now, descending to fill your mind. So your mind merges with that sky, and it's filled with that smile. See if you can imagine the smile spreading through the eyes, so that the eyes soften and the brow is smooth. Corners of the eyes up a little, smiling into the eyes, perhaps sensing the space between the eyes. Open and receptive. Slight smile at the mouth. The inside of the mouth smiling. you can shift your entire nervous system around. This has been called smile yoga. It relaxes the limbic system, creates a real sense of compassion and ease in the body. Eyes are smiling. Mouth. See if you can imagine and feel a smile spreading through the throat. So as you breathe in, you can feel the sensations there. Breathe out and just sense an opening. Space. The eyes are soft, mouth smiling, throat. Learning to recognize perfectionism is an important first step, as it helps you to figure out whether you have a problem with perfectionism. Remember, there is nothing wrong with having high standards, but when these standards are too high, they can really get in the way of your work, school, relationships, and enjoyment of life. If you have trouble figuring out whether you have a problem with perfectionism, you might find answering the following questions helpful. Do I have trouble meeting my own standards? Do I often feel frustrated, depressed, anxious, or angry while trying to meet my standards? Have I been told that my standards are too high? Do my standards get in the way? For example, do they make it difficult for me to meet deadlines, finish a task, trust others, or do anything spontaneously? If you answered yes to any of these questions, you may have a problem with perfectionism. Perfectionism can make you feel depressed, frustrated, anxious, and even angry, especially if you constantly criticize yourself for not doing a good enough job after spending a lot of time and effort on a task. Examples of being a perfectionist might include thinking anything less than perfection is a failure. If I need help from others, then I am weak. If I make a mistake in front of my co-workers, I won't be able to survive the humiliation. I can't handle having someone being upset with me. Although I spent all night preparing for a presentation, I know it won't do well. My boss will think I'm lazy if I take a couple of days off sick. I should never make mistakes. I should never come across as nervous or anxious. I should always be able to predict problems before they occur. You may recognize some of the following behavior of a perfectionist: chronic procrastination, difficulty completing tasks or giving up easily, overly cautious and thorough in tasks. For example, spending 3 hours on a task that takes others 20 minutes to complete. Excessive checking. For example, spending 30 minutes looking over a brief email to your boss for possible spelling mistakes. Constantly trying to improve things by redoing them. For example, rewriting a work document several times to make it perfect. Agonizing over small details, like what movie to rent. Making elaborate to-do lists. For example, when to get up, brush teeth, shower, etc. Avoiding trying new things and risking making mistakes. Please remember that there is no perfect way to meditate and no wrong way of doing it either. Just being here in this moment, listening, feeling your body, and letting your mind have this moment of forgiveness and letting go. Your body and mind thank you for taking this moment. Smiling now into the heart. See if you can imagine a smile spreading through the whole heart and chest area. Sense the true thoughts and feelings about yourself that you don't share with anyone else. Not covering over anything, but making room for what you feel in your heart. Now sense the self-love begin to bud like a beautiful flower. As a flower begins to bloom in the morning sun, imagine that this is you finally allowing yourself to be okay with who you are, that you will make mistakes, and that's okay. sensing the space and aliveness in the chest area, spreading outward and outward so that the shoulders have room to relax, back and down. Can you imagine the space inside the shoulders? The aliveness inside the shoulders. Feeling from the inside out. Feel the energy and space through the arms, right down into the hands. Experiment by softening the hands, and then even a little more, noticing with a delicate attention the expression of life in the hands. Perhaps you find a tingling or vibrating, areas or patches of heat, pressure, pulsing. You might sense if you can feel simultaneously in the hands, the arms, and the shoulders. This whole area of aliveness and space. Feeling into the chest, and again that smile in the heart area, and see if you can feel the space, aliveness, and self-love that fills the whole chest. There are tools that you can use for overcoming perfectionism. The first is changing perfectionistic thinking, because people like us with perfectionism are often very critical of ourselves. One of the most effective ways to overcome perfectionism is to replace self-critical or perfectionistic thoughts with more realistic and helpful statements. It's a good idea to practice these helpful statements regularly, even if you don't believe them right away. Enough repetition will turn positive, realistic thoughts into a habit and help crowd out the negative self-talk. Some examples of positive statements that you can tell yourself would be, nobody is perfect. All I can do is my best. Making a mistake does not mean I'm stupid or a failure. It only means that I'm like everyone else, human. Everyone makes mistakes. It's okay not to be pleasant all the time. Everyone has a bad day sometime. It's okay if some people don't like me. No one is liked by everyone. People with perfectionism also tend to have a hard time seeing things from another person's point of view. That is, we tend not to think about how others might see a situation. For example, you may believe that you are lazy because you are only able to exercise 1 hour instead of 2 hours every day. Learning to view situations as other people might see them can help you to change some of these unhelpful beliefs. Going back to the "I'm lazy" example, you can challenge the thought by asking yourself the following questions. How might someone else, like a close friend, view this situation? Most people probably wouldn't think they are lazy if they do not exercise 2 hours every day. Kelly, my best friend, only has time to work out for 1 hour, 2 to 3 times a week, and feels pretty good about it. Are there other ways to look at this? Maybe not being able to work out 2 hours every day is understandable given my busy schedule. Not being able to meet this standard does not mean I'm lazy. Most people can't do it. What might I tell a close friend who is having similar thoughts? It's okay to work out for 1 hour a day, or even less. Working out regularly, say 2 to 3 times a week, is good enough. As perfectionists, we tend to get bogged down in details and spend a lot of time worrying about the little things. For example, what font we use in an email. One helpful strategy to worry less about details is to ask yourself the following questions. Does it really matter? What is the worst that could happen? If the worst does happen, can I survive it? Will this still matter tomorrow? How about next week? Next year? Compromising is a particularly helpful tool for dealing with black and white thinking. Compromising involves lowering or being more flexible with your very high standards. For example, if you believe that making a mistake during a presentation means that you're stupid, you might try asking yourself, what level of imperfection am I willing to tolerate? From there, you can try to come up with some lower and more reasonable standards that you're willing to accept. Because it's quite anxiety-provoking when you first start trying to lower your standards, you can do so gradually, in steps. The first step to more reasonable standards are these examples. It might involve spending 3 hours instead of 5 preparing for a presentation, allowing yourself to make a mistake during 1 out of 5 presentations, or being okay with having fewer than 5 people praise your performance. Once you're comfortable with lowering your standards a bit, lower them some more. For example, the next step might involve spending 1 hour preparing for the presentation, allowing yourself to make a mistake during 1 out of 2 presentations, or being okay with not knowing what others think of your performance. Are you scared of lowering your standards because you worry you will let too many of your standards go and make mistakes all the time? Here are some helpful tips to address your worry. Remember, lowering your standards does not mean having no standards. The goal is never to make you become careless in life and perform poorly all the time. Realistic standards are standards that can actually help you to do your best without costing you things that may be important to you, such as family life, physical and mental health, and leisure time. Do you feel ambivalent about lowering your standards? If you're not sure whether you should lower certain standards, it's a good idea to make a list of pros and cons for lowering these standards. What are the costs to holding on to these standards? Keeping the costs in mind can help you to take the brave steps towards changing. It's okay to ask for help. Sometimes it's difficult to know how to lower an unrealistic standard to a more reasonable level. It's a good idea to ask a supportive person who doesn't have problems with perfectionism to help you with setting new realistic standards. Bringing our minds back to our body. Experiment now by smiling into the navel area. Curve the smile in the belly. And see if it's possible to sense the loosening or opening or space that's there. Let the awareness fill the belly. Just as a cup can be filled with water, this whole body can be filled with awareness. Feeling the vibration of sensations down through the legs. Placing the whole awareness in the feet and feeling the life that's there. Again, the tingling, the vibrating. So if you open the attention wide, you can sense this body as an energy field, this changing dance of vibrating and tingling, of heat and cool, of flowing or tightness, pleasantness, unpleasantness. Just sense what happens if you let it all be as it is Just be the space it's happening in. Sensing how this waking hopefulness includes sound. The close-in sounds, soft sounds in the room, these words that appear and disappear in awareness. Like a symphony, more distant sounds. This whole field of aliveness, sound and sensation just appearing and disappearing in awareness. The next step in overcoming your perfectionism, in changing your perfectionistic behaviors. Having a problem with perfectionism is a lot like having a phobia of making mistakes or being imperfect. We are terrified of making mistakes. Facing fears in a gradual and consistent manner is the most effective way to overcome phobias, and is called exposure. For example, the best way to overcome a dog phobia is to gradually spend time with dogs, to learn that they are not all as scary and dangerous as you initially thought. Similarly, overcoming your phobia of making mistakes or being imperfect involves doing just that, gradually and purposely making mistakes and coming across as imperfect. This technique also usually involves gradually putting yourself into situations that you usually avoid out of fear that things won't work out perfectly. Here are some examples to help you brainstorm items for exposure practice. Show up for an appointment 15 minutes late. Leave a visible area in the house a little messy. Tell people when you are tired or other feelings that you consider it a weakness to have. Wear a piece of clothing that has a visible stain on it. Purposely allow several uncomfortable silences to occur during lunch with a coworker. Purposefully be a few cents short for bus fare. lose your train of thought during a presentation. Send a letter or email that includes a few mistakes. Talk at a meeting without first rehearsing what you're going to say in your head. Try a new restaurant without first researching how good it is. You'll need to practice the technique you chose several times before you start to feel more comfortable making mistakes. Don't be discouraged if your anxiety doesn't come down right away at first. This is normal and expected. Keep trying and repeating the exposure as frequently as you can. Another helpful hint is to stop yourself from engaging in excessive behaviors designed to prevent imperfection. For example, if you tend to repeatedly check written documents for mistakes, stop yourself from checking more than once. Or spend 30 minutes instead of 2 hours to prepare for a 15-minute presentation. Drifting back to focus on your body, sensing the simple inflow and outflow of the breath. Sensing how relaxed it's possible to be with the breath. So when there's an inflow, there's a deep kind of giving yourself open. An outflow, releasing. Again, remember forgiveness if you begin to beat yourself up for not doing meditation right. There is no perfect experience, only your experience. You can let this breath be a kind of home base. When the mind drifts, goes off into virtual reality, to notice and gently re-choose presence. Reopen the senses. To the sounds that are actually happening here. The sensations that are happening here. To this very inflow of breath, this moment, and this outflow. Know that you are here. Many of us struggling with perfectionism often cope with our fear of making mistakes by procrastinating. When you set perfect standards for yourself, sometimes it might feel easier to procrastinate carrying out a task rather than spending hours trying to do it. For example, you might find that your house is usually messy, even though you have very high standards of cleanliness and organization. Or you might put off writing a report for work because you're afraid you won't be able to complete the task perfectly. Or you might be overwhelmed by how much work you have to put into it and don't know where to start. However, procrastination is only a temporary solution, and it tends to make your anxiety worse over time. Here are some ways to help you to overcome procrastination. Create realistic schedules. Break down larger tasks into manageable steps. On a chart or calendar, write down the goal or deadline and work towards it. Setting small goals for yourself along the way. Don't forget to reward yourself for reaching each goal. It is also helpful to decide in advance how much time you will spend on each task. Remember, the goal is to complete the task, not to make it perfect. Perfectionists sometimes have trouble deciding on where they should devote their energy and effort. Prioritize your tasks by deciding which are the most important to accomplish and which are less important. It's okay not to give 100% on every task. You can start fresh in any moment, just noticing where the mind has been, and with interest, with kindness, reconnecting. And just notice the sounds that are here. Let them wash through you. Relax. Sense if it's possible to let go just a little bit more in the body. Let the heart be very undefended and open to this new way of being. Sense what happens if you just notice moment to moment, the changing flow of experience. It's hard work to face your fears and change old ways of doing things. So make sure to always take the time to reward yourself for all the hard work you're doing. It's very motivating to give yourself a treat once in a while. A reward might include going out for a nice meal, taking a walk, going out with friends, or just taking some time to relax or pamper yourself. If something is difficult, experiment with saying yes. Either the word yes or just a cellular yes. Agreeing to your experience.